Hey Holy Cross, Pastor Rick here. So video that's about a week late. I promised it last week. I'm sorry about that. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it done before then, but now we are here, and what I want to do just is take a minute and talk through, for those of you who have been worshiping at home and maybe been curious about our practices, or for those of you who have been coming and maybe you haven't been aware of what some of our practices are. And maybe even for a third group, there are some of you who have just encountered Holy Cross through our online virtual presence, and maybe you're considering coming, but you're unsure about what our practices are for in-person worship during this season of COVID. So I just want to take a minute and talk about those to help you understand where we are and what we are doing as a church to help everyone stay safe and healthy. So I have in front of me the Safer at Home Phase 3 guidelines for religious services, and I wanted to just kind of read those as we talk about this, so that we can all understand what has been required of churches if they want to reopen. These have been put out by the Virginia Department of Health and the Governor's Office, and we are doing our best to try and adhere to the guidelines that are stated in this Phase 3 plan. So there are two sets of different practices. The first are the mandatory requirements. The mandatory requirements are those requirements that you must meet to be able to conduct public worship. And the next set are the best practices. And those are kind of some suggestions, some guidelines, some thoughts about how to maybe keep things going, but do so in a way that would be healthier. And so that's what these look like. You can find them online, and they are there at virginia.gov in the Phase 3 guidelines. So here are the first ones. The first one is that individuals attending religious services must be seated 6 feet apart. That is something that if you are if you're someone who's been worshiping at home with us through our streaming service, that it's almost impossible for you to know whether that's going on, right? Because you are only viewing the stage. In the Grace Christian School gym, we have rows set up. Those rows are 6 feet apart against both walls. We have about 8 or 9 chairs, and then a 6 foot distance between those two, and a center row that only has 3, to be able to account for multiple different kinds of families that are coming, or households that are coming. And so then in between the rows, there are 6 feet. We've marked it off with tape, and our setup folks have been very diligent to either line up on those tape spots or bring their own tape measure and do it themselves. That has pushed our seating a little bit further forward than many of us are used to if you've been to Holy Cross, and that is because all of our preaching, all of our anything that's going on from the front is happening on the stage, except for the celebration of the Lord's Supper. And so we're adhering to that. Those rows that are 8 or 9 chairs long are kind of held out for family units. However, if it's a smaller family on one end, there is space in between to be able to have that 6 feet of distance in between those. The second one, any items used to distribute food or beverages must be disposable and used only once. This is really only going to apply to our communion setup. The team that's setting up our communion every week, because we do practice weekly communion, is masked, and their hands are sanitized as they are setting up for communion. As always, we serve out of single-serve cups for the wine and or juice, and then the bread is distributed by the elders who sanitize their hands when they're coming up, so that and seeking to not touch anyone else, so that their actions are keeping folks safe. When we serve communion, the elders are coming to those that are seated as they stand up, and we are masked, and the elements are completely covered up until the time in which we serve. And so they're not in any danger there. The third one is a thorough cleaning and disinfection of frequently contacted surfaces must be conducted prior to or following any religious service. And so that is something that we are doing as well. We do that at the end of every service, and this is one of the things, for those of you who have been worshiping with us, I'm going to ask a favor of you to best be a good tenant to our landlord, Grace Christian School. Any room that any of our people, including our littlest people, enter, we have to disinfect. And so there are rooms on the first floor that we have as our cry room, our designated nursery, and our mask-only room that folks are taking advantage of. Those are rooms that we are thoroughly disinfecting. The setup team, or whoever is the nursery folks, whoever is kind of taking those rooms down, is making sure every surface has been disinfected with the wipes that are provided by Grace in 5-gallon buckets. What we're asking of you is if you can please remind your children that the other rooms that may be unlocked are not for play. And that is because it just we don't want anything to be happening to those rooms that may happen when kids are unsupervised and playing. And we also we don't want to increase the workload for our volunteers to have to disinfect all of the rooms at Grace, and instead just do the ones that we are entering. But that is also something that is going on. The fourth mandatory requirement is to post signage at all of the entrance as public health reminders of social distancing, options for high-risk individuals, and staying home if sick. And those signs are up at every entrance to Grace Christian School. In fact, we have extra signs that we have also put up and take down each Sunday. And then lastly, is just the statement that if any place of worship cannot adhere to the above requirements, it must not conduct in-person services. The good news is we can, and we have been. And so we are fully compliant with the mandatory requirements of Phase 3 for religious services. We're trying to follow all of the possible best practices as well that we can, as well as the mandatory requirements, but we are fully compliant with the requirements that are there. And so I just wanted to take that few minutes and talk about what we're doing, how we're trying to stay safe. We have been blessed with the fact that with 10 weeks of public worship, we have not had a single case of COVID-19, and we hope to continue that. The one thing that I do additionally want to say is that we are encouraging folks to, when you come in and leave our worship service, to try your best to keep social distance, and when you can't, we would appreciate it if you could wear a mask. If you're going to do conversations, fellowship, hanging out, our people love each other, we love to hang out, please try and do that outside. You can do that either in the front on the patio that's out there, or go out into the back parking lot. There's plenty of space. We love for folks to be able to communicate, but we also want to try and keep everybody safe. It's been so good to see so many of you come back. I think Mark said this several weeks ago when we first started, that it does a pastor's heart good to see the flock, and I agree. And I long for that day when one way or another we can all be back together in a safe way, because those of you who haven't been able to be back, we miss you, and we long to be back with you. So that's gonna wrap this video up. I hope that has answered as many questions as you've had. If it hasn't, you can feel free to contact us at the office. We'll do as best we can to try and answer your questions, knowing that in this kind of situation, with the diversity of opinions and the diversity of even experts, that there is no way that we can make a decision or do something that's going to make everyone happy. And that has been an unfortunate thing in this. And so, but we will do our best to answer the questions you have. Know that as your pastor, I'm praying for you, and I can't wait to see you again and to see you regularly every week.